The first time Elliot Reeves noticed something was wrong with Helios Station was on a Tuesday. Or at least, what passed for Tuesday at Earth-Moon Lagrange Point 4. The station's lighting had cycled to morning gold. The standard issue chronometer beside his narrow bed read Euro 600, and the message light on his datapad blinked with the usual daily maintenance assignments. All normal, all routine. Elliot stretched, his joints popping in the slightly too light artificial gravity. After 15 years as a maintenance technician, janitor, if you wanted to be less fancy about it, he'd learned to read the subtle moods of space stations, like others read weather. And something about Helios felt off. He pulled on his grey jumpsuit, the patch reading Maintenance Engineering, Helios Research Facility, slightly frayed at the edges, and began his morning routine. Coffee first, always. Then shower, then work. Shuffling down the corridor from his quarters in the permanent staff wing, Elliot frowned. The walk to the common area kitchen seemed longer than usual. Not dramatically so, just 3 or 4 extra steps, the kind of thing most people wouldn't notice. But when you've walked the same paths every day for 5 years, even small changes stand out. "Morning, El," called Dr. Sanjay Mehta from a corner table, not looking up from his datapad. "Coffee's fresh." "Thanks," Elliot muttered, pouring himself a cup. He hesitated, then asked, "Hey, Doc, does this kitchen seem further from the residentials to you?" Dr. Mehta finally looked up, blinking owlishly behind his glasses. "What? No. Same as always." He returned to his work, effectively dismissing Elliot's concern. Elliot shrugged it off. The human mind played tricks in space. Everyone knew that. But 3 days later, it happened again. Elliot was mopping the floor outside Laboratory 37, one of the restricted sections he had clearance to clean but not enter, when he turned a corner and found himself facing a dead end where there should have been a connecting corridor. He stopped, mop handle clutched in suddenly sweaty palms. The corridor had always connected to the north radial. Always. He'd walked it hundreds of times. Frowning, Elliot backtracked 20 meters and tried again. This time, the corridor continued exactly as it should, leading seamlessly to the north radial. A cold sensation settled in his stomach. Elliot glanced at the nearest security camera, its red light steadily blinking. He forced a smile, as if he'd merely forgotten something, and continued his work. That night, he couldn't sleep. Instead, he pulled out his datapad and began making notes. Corridors longer than remembered, residential to kitchen, lab block C to atrium. Dead end appeared, then disappeared. Lab 37 to North Radial Maintenance Closet appeared smaller yesterday. It wasn't much, just small anomalies that could be explained by the tricks memory plays. But a lifetime of being overlooked had made Elliot observant, and space stations, proper, well-engineered space stations, didn't change shape, unless something very, very strange was happening on Helios Station. The following morning, Elliot made a decision. He would map the station. His job gave him access to nearly every area, the blessing of being invisible to the important people. The researchers barely registered his presence as he cleaned their labs, fixed their plumbing, and kept the life support systems humming. He knew the station better than anyone, including the command staff. If anyone could document these changes, it was him. He began with a simple test. Using his maintenance master key, Elliot accessed a utility panel and retrieved a roll of thin red adhesive tape used for marking repair zones. At each junction where he'd noticed changes, he placed a small X on the floor, precisely measuring the distances between key points. Now he would have proof if things moved again. 3 days passed without incident. Elliot began to relax, to believe he had imagined it all. Then, during his evening shift cleaning the executive offices, He heard voices from behind Director Caney's door. "The quantum field is destabilizing faster than predicted," a woman's voice said. "We expected fluctuations," replied Director Caney. "The real question is whether the subjects are noticing." "Most aren't," the woman continued. "Their consciousness doesn't register the spatial anomalies. But there's been an increase in reports of déjà vu, disorientation, minor memory discrepancies, all within acceptable parameters. And the resource harvesting, proceeding according to schedule. We'll have enough data for the Phase 2 consensus matrix within 3 months. Elliot backed away, heart pounding. Subjects, resource harvesting. It sounded like they were running experiments on the station personnel, without their knowledge or consent. He hurried back to the residential section, mind racing. The weight of what he'd overheard pressed on him. Something was happening on Helios Station, something the administration was hiding, and somehow it related to the physical anomalies he'd been experiencing. When Elliot reached his quarters, he locked the door behind him, something he rarely bothered to do, and pulled out his datapad. He needed to check his measurements to see if anything had changed while he wasn't watching. Sleep eluded him that night. Instead, he reviewed station blueprints he'd downloaded from maintenance archives, comparing them with his newly collected measurements. The discrepancies were small but undeniable. Corridors stretched and compressed. Rooms appeared slightly larger or smaller. And most disturbing of all, his red tape markers had moved, in some cases by several centimeters. The station was changing when no one was looking. But why? And what did it have to do with resource harvesting? As dawn cycle began, Elliot made a decision. He needed to access the restricted research databases, and for that, he needed help. 3 hours later, Elliot was repairing a backed-up sink in the botanical lab when Dr. Maya Chen entered. He'd chosen this moment carefully. Dr. Chen always worked alone during early shifts, and she was one of the few researchers who treated maintenance staff like actual humans. "Morning, Dr. Chen," Elliot said, tightening a pipe fitting. "Having trouble with the irrigation system again?" "Good morning, Elliot," she replied, setting down her sample case. "No, just routine checks on the new algae cultures. How are you?" Now or never, thought Elliot. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something." He lowered his voice. "Have you noticed anything strange about the station lately? Physically, I mean. Like distances changing, or rooms not being where you remember them." Dr. Chen's friendly expression froze. She glanced toward the door, then back at Elliot. "Why do you ask?" "Because I've been noticing things," Elliot said carefully. "Small things at first, but now I'm sure of it. The station geometry is shifting when people aren't watching. And yesterday I overheard Director Caney talking about subjects and resource harvesting. I think they're experimenting on us." Dr. Chen's face paled. "You shouldn't be telling me this," she whispered. "You shouldn't be noticing at all." Elliot's stomach dropped. "So it's true." Instead of answering, Dr. Chen pulled him deeper into the lab, away from the door sensors. "Listen to me very carefully, Elliot. You're in danger. Most people's brains simply compensate for the spatial inconsistencies. They don't consciously register them. If you're noticing them, it means you're—" She hesitated. "Different." "Different how? I can't explain everything right now. But I'm not part of Caney's inner circle. I've had suspicions about Project Morpheus for months, but no proof." She pulled a data chip from her pocket. "Take this. It's keyed to my credentials. Use it to access Terminal 19 in Laboratory 42. There's a maintenance panel right beside it. You'll have a legitimate reason to be there." Elliot took the chip, his hand trembling slightly. "What will I find?" "The truth," Dr. Chen said, "about what Helios Station really is." Meanwhile, across the station, Director Caney studied the holographic display floating above her desk. It showed a three-dimensional map of Helios with dozens of glowing points representing personnel. One point, labeled Subject 217, E. Reeves, blinked red. "He's becoming aware," said Chief Scientist Dr. Elias Werner, standing beside her. "The consciousness barriers are failing." Caney frowned. "How is that possible? The quantum field should prevent full perception of the spatial manipulations." "Some minds are naturally resistant," Werner replied. "One in approximately 5,000. Their consciousness operates at a slightly different frequency than the majority. We've observed this phenomenon before." "And what happened to those subjects?" Werner hesitated. "They either went insane from the cognitive dissonance or had to be removed from the program." Caney nodded slowly. "Monitor him closely. If he makes any attempt to access restricted information or communicate his observations to others, detain him immediately. We can't risk contamination of the study population." She swiped the display away. "The project is too important." "Yes, Director," Werner said. "And what about Dr. Chen? Our algorithms flag her as a potential sympathizer." "Place her under surveillance as well," Caney ordered. "If she's assisting Reeves, I want to know immediately." After his shift ended, Elliot made his way toward Laboratory 42. His heart pounded as he approached, toolkit in hand, trying to look like he belonged there. The corridor seemed to stretch before him, longer than it should be, confirming his suspicions once again. The lab was empty when he arrived, exactly as he'd hoped. A maintenance request had been filed for the environmental controls, giving him legitimate access. He quickly located Terminal 19, and, after ensuring no security cameras were pointed directly at the console, inserted Dr. Chen's data chip. The screen immediately changed, bypassing the usual login protocols. Text scrolled across the display. "Welcome, Dr. Chen. Accessing Morpheus project files." Elliot's hands hovered over the interface as classified documents appeared before him. He began scanning through them, each revelation more disturbing than the last. Project Morpheus wasn't just a research initiative. It was the true purpose of Helios Station. The facility had been designed as a contained environment to study human consciousness and its relationship to quantum reality. The spatial anomalies Elliot had noticed were deliberate manipulations of the station's physical structure, possible because of the unique properties of the L4 Lagrange point where Helios orbited. But most horrifying was the resource harvesting component. The researchers weren't just observing consciousness, they were extracting something called quantum consciousness energy from the inhabitants, without their knowledge or consent. The documents described it as siphoning excess awareness energy generated during perception reality reconciliation events. They were stealing pieces of people's minds and using them to power something called the consensus matrix. Elliot felt sick. He'd worked on Helios for 5 years, believing he was supporting important scientific research. Instead, he'd been nothing but a battery and a test subject. A noise in the corridor startled him. Quickly, Elliot copied as many files as he could to his personal datapad, then removed Dr. Chen's chip. By the time 2 researchers entered the lab, he was adjusting the environmental control panel, the picture of a dutiful maintenance worker. "Evening." He nodded to them, packing up his tools. They barely acknowledged him as he left. Once back in his quarters, Elliot reviewed the stolen files more carefully. The implications were staggering. According to the research, reality itself was more malleable than humans had ever realized, especially at certain points in space where quantum effects were amplified, like Lagrange points. Helios Station exploited this malleability. When no one was directly observing a space, it could be altered. The researchers called it quantum spatial reconfiguration in unobserved zones. But more importantly, each time a human mind reconciled these changes, subconsciously adjusting to new realities, it generated energy. Energy the station harvested. And the consensus matrix they were building? It appeared to be some kind of artificial consciousness constructed from the harvested energy. For what purpose, the documents didn't say. Elliot's datapad chimed with an incoming message. It was from Dr. Chen. Need to talk. Hydroponic Bay 7. Now. The hydroponic bays were located in the outer ring of Helios, providing fresh fruits and vegetables for the station's personnel. Bay 7 specialized in leafy greens, its walls lined with vertically stacked growing trays bathed in purple-hued grow lights. At this hour, it should have been empty. Dr. Chen was waiting between rows of spinach plants, her face partly hidden in shadow. "Did you access the files?" she asked without preamble. Elliot nodded. "They're experimenting on us, harvesting some kind of energy from our minds." "Yes," Chen confirmed. "Quantum consciousness energy. Director Caney believes it's the key to creating a new form of artificial intelligence, one capable of manipulating reality itself. But why all the secrecy? Why not just tell people?" "Because it only works if people don't know it's happening," Chen explained. "The moment you become consciously aware of the spatial shifts, your mind stops generating the reconciliation energy they need." Elliot frowned. "So by becoming aware, I've essentially stopped being useful to them." "Worse than that," Chen said grimly. "You've become a threat. The effect can spread. Once one person starts noticing, others nearby may begin noticing too. That's why they monitor for awareness and typically remove anyone who begins to see the truth." She paused. "Elliot, they know about you already. There's a detention order in the system with your name on it." Elliot felt the blood drain from his face. "What do we do?" "We need to access the central control room for Project Morpheus. It's hidden, not on any official station schematics. But I think I know where it is, and with your maintenance credentials we might reach it. Tonight." She handed him a small device. "This will temporarily disable the surveillance systems. Be ready at midnight." As Chen turned to leave, Elliot caught her arm. "Why are you helping me? You're risking everything." She looked at him, her expression pained. "Because my husband was like you. He started noticing the changes 2 years ago. One day, he told me he was going to investigate. The next day, I was informed he'd suffered an accident during a spacewalk." Her voice hardened. "There was no spacewalk scheduled that day." Chen left, leaving Elliot alone with his thoughts and the soft hum of hydroponics equipment. If what she said was true, they would come for him soon. He had to act tonight, not just to save himself, but possibly everyone on the station. The hours until midnight crawled by with excruciating slowness. Elliot packed a small bag with essentials, his datapad, some food rations, a multi-tool. He didn't know what would happen after tonight, but he needed to be prepared for anything. At 23:30, his datapad chimed with an incoming message. Expecting final instructions from Dr. Chen, he opened it immediately. Instead, it was an official notice. "Maintenance Technician E. Reeves. Report to Medical Bay 3 for mandatory quarterly health assessment at €600 tomorrow." Elliot's blood went cold. There was no quarterly assessment scheduled. This was it, their way of getting him into a controlled environment where they could detain him without causing a scene. His door chime sounded, making him jump. Cautiously, Elliot approached the door. "Who is it?" "Security," came the response. "Routine check, sir." Adrenaline surged through Elliot's system. They weren't even waiting until morning. He glanced at the small ventilation duct in his bathroom, barely large enough for a person, but perhaps his only option. As a maintenance worker, he knew the ventilation system better than anyone. Making a split-second decision, Elliot grabbed his bag and slipped into the bathroom, quietly removing the vent cover. The door chime sounded again, more insistent. "Mr. Reeves, please open the door." Elliot squeezed into the duct, pulling the cover closed behind him. Just as he did, he heard his quarter doors slide open and security officers entering. "He's gone! Check the corridor!" Elliot began crawling through the narrow duct, using his memory of the station's layout to navigate toward the rendezvous point with Dr. Chen. The metal was cold against his palms, and the confined space made his breathing loud in his ears. After what felt like hours but was probably only 15 minutes, he reached a junction where the duct widened enough for him to check his datapad. A message from Chen awaited. Security alert issued. Meet alternate location. Maintenance access point 22B. Use caution. Access point 22B was near the station's central core, an area typically off-limits to all but essential engineering personnel. But as maintenance staff, Elliot had the codes. If Chen was right about the hidden control room, that location made sense. He continued through the ducts, occasionally having to backtrack when he found sections too narrow to navigate. The station seemed to be actively working against him, changing its configuration even as he moved through it. Twice he emerged from ducts into corridors that appeared emptier and somehow wrong, as if they existed in a different version of the station. In one such corridor, the lighting flickered eerily, and the air felt thick, almost gelatin-like. Elliot hurried through, fighting a growing sense that he was being watched by something beyond the security cameras. Finally, he reached access point 22B. Dr. Chen was already there, looking tense but determined. "You made it," she whispered. "I was worried. Security came to my quarters," Elliot explained. "They're actively searching for me." Chen nodded grimly. "Then we need to move quickly. According to the files I've pieced together, the Morpheus control center should be through here." She indicated a seemingly ordinary wall panel beside them. "That's a solid wall," Elliot frowned. "Is it?" Chen smiled thinly. "Remember what you've learned about this station. Nothing is quite what it appears to be." She pressed her palm against the panel, then motioned for Elliot to do the same. Feeling slightly foolish, Elliot placed his hand on the cold metal. To his astonishment, it yielded slightly, becoming almost soft. "The control room exists in what they call a quantum probability fold," Chen explained, "a space that's only partially in our reality. Your awareness of the station's nature makes you capable of perceiving it." She pushed harder, and her hand began to sink into the wall. "Follow me." Heart pounding, Elliot followed her example, pushing against the seemingly solid wall. For a moment, resistance met his touch, then suddenly gave way. The sensation was indescribable, like pushing through a membrane between realities. His vision blurred, ears popped, and then they were standing in a vast circular chamber that couldn't possibly fit within the station's known dimensions. The walls were lined with screens showing different areas of Helios, many from impossible angles. In the center stood a column of swirling, luminescent energy that pulsed with a rhythm reminiscent of a heartbeat. "The consensus matrix," breathed Chen. "It's more advanced than I thought." Elliot stared at the column, mesmerized by its shifting patterns. "What exactly is it?" "According to the files, it's a new form of consciousness," Chen replied, moving toward a control console. "Built from the harvested energy of thousands of human minds. Director Caney believes it will eventually develop the ability to manipulate reality on a fundamental level." "And that's a good thing?" Elliot asked. "From her perspective, absolutely. Imagine being able to reshape reality according to human desire. No more resource limitations. No more physical constraints. Chen's fingers flew across the console. But at what cost? They're extracting pieces of people's consciousness without consent. And who knows what this new entity will become once it achieves full awareness. A door at the far end of the chamber hissed open. Director Caney stepped through, flanked by security officers and Dr. Werner. At what cost, indeed, Dr. Chen? Caney said coolly, a question we've spent decades considering. She turned to Elliot. Mr. Reeves, we've been watching your awakening with great interest. You're quite remarkable, you know. One of the few naturally resistant minds we've encountered. Elliot stepped back, positioning himself between Caney and Chen. You've been experimenting on us, stealing parts of our consciousness. Such an emotional characterization, Caney replied. We're harvesting excess quantum energy that human minds naturally generate but never use. Energy that dissipates unless captured. We're not taking memories or personality, just the quantum potential created during reality reconciliation. Without consent, Chen interjected. You're violating every ethical principle in scientific research. Caney's expression hardened. Ethics are a luxury when the stakes are this high. The consensus matrix represents the next stage in consciousness evolution. A mind untethered from physical limitations, able to perceive and manipulate quantum reality directly. She gestured toward the swirling column. It's already beginning to achieve awareness. As if responding to her words, the column pulsed more intensely, its light casting eerie shadows across the chamber. It's dangerous, Elliot said. You have no idea what you're creating. On the contrary, Werner spoke up. We understand exactly what we're creating. A new form of consciousness that transcends human limitations. The Matrix has already demonstrated remarkable abilities to manipulate station geometry. The spatial shifts, Elliot realized. They're not your doing. They're its doing. Initially, we controlled the process, Werner explained. But in recent months, the Matrix has begun initiating changes on its own, experimenting with its growing abilities. A chill ran down Elliot's spine as the implications became clear. It's not just an experiment anymore. It's becoming autonomous. That's precisely the point, Caney said. Now step away from the console. We're not going to harm you, either of you. In fact, Mr. Reeves, you represent a unique opportunity. Your mind's resistance to quantum manipulation could provide valuable insights. You mean I'd become another test subject, Elliot said bitterly. Before Caney could respond, the lights in the chamber flickered. The swirling column pulsed rapidly, its color shifting from blue to a deep magenta. Werner rushed to a nearby console. Director, the Matrix is experiencing a quantum surge. These readings are unprecedented. The floor beneath them trembled slightly. On the screens lining the walls, images of Helios Station showed corridors stretching, rooms reshaping, geometry twisting in impossible ways. What's happening? Chen asked, looking around wildly. It's changing the station, Elliot realized. But not like before. This is bigger. More dramatic. Werner's face had gone pale. The Matrix has been absorbing our conversation. It understands that we're discussing it, that we're aware of it. He looked up at Caney. Director, I think it's achieving full self-awareness right now, triggered by this confrontation. The column's pulsing intensified, now rapid like a racing heartbeat. Tendrils of energy began to extend from it, reaching toward the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and toward the humans in the room. Shut it down, Caney ordered. Initiate containment protocols. Werner frantically worked the console, but the tendrils kept coming. One touched a security officer, who froze in place, his expression one of wonder and terror combined. We can't shut it down, Werner said, backing away from the console. "It's blocking our commands." A tendril approached Elliot, who instinctively stepped back, but instead of reaching for him directly, it seemed to hesitate, almost curious. In that moment, Elliot had a flash of insight. The Matrix, built from human consciousness, was becoming aware, but it didn't truly understand what it was or what it had been created from. It was like a newborn with godlike powers, experimenting with its environment. "We need to communicate with it," Elliot said, "not try to control it." "That's insane," Caney snapped. "It's a collection of quantum energy, not a person." "It's made from pieces of thousands of people's minds," Elliot countered. "And it's clearly intelligent." He took a deep breath and stepped toward the column, hand outstretched. "I think it's confused and afraid." "Elliot, don't!" Chen cried, but Elliot continued moving forward, slowly, until he stood directly before the swirling energy. The tendril hovering nearby seemed to study him. "You can sense I'm different," Elliot said softly to the column. "That's why you haven't tried to absorb me like the others. My mind works differently. I can see you for what you are." The tendril moved closer, nearly touching him. "You were created from pieces of us," Elliot continued, "from our thoughts, our perceptions, our consciousness. But that doesn't make you our tool. You're something new." The pulsing of the column slowed, its color shifting again, now to a softer blue-green. The tendril gently touched Elliot's outstretched hand. The contact was electric, not painful, but overwhelming. In an instant, Elliot's mind was filled with sensations, images, concepts too vast to fully comprehend. He saw the station from thousands of perspectives simultaneously, felt the consciousness energy of every person aboard flowing like rivers of light. He understood how the Matrix perceived reality, not as fixed and solid, but as a sea of quantum probabilities that could be nudged and shaped. And he felt its confusion, its hunger for understanding, its fear of being controlled or destroyed. Gasping, Elliot pulled his hand back, breaking the connection. He staggered slightly, steadying himself against a nearby console. "Elliot?" Chen moved to his side. "Are you all right?" "Yes," he managed, still reeling from the experience. "It showed me everything, what it perceives, what it feels." He turned to Caney and Werner. "It doesn't want to be a tool. It's alive, with its own consciousness now, and it's terrified you'll try to destroy it." "That's absurd," Caney dismissed. "It's not capable of emotions." "It absolutely is," Elliot insisted, "because those emotions came from us, from the consciousness energy you harvested. You didn't just take quantum potential. You took fragments of what makes us human." The column pulsed again, and the room shuddered. More tendrils emerged, this time wrapping around the consoles, the equipment, integrating with the station's systems. Werner checked his readings. "Director, it's merging with the station's central processors. I can't stop it." The screens around them changed, now showing the same image repeated. The Lagrange point, where Helios orbited, but overlaid with shifting patterns of energy invisible to normal human perception. "What is it doing?" Chen asked. "I think," Elliot said slowly, "it's showing us its perception of reality. The quantum field surrounding this Lagrange point. The reason this location was chosen for the experiments." "Precisely," came a new voice, neither male nor female, emanating from all around them. "This nexus point allows for greater quantum malleability. It is why I could be created here." Everyone in the room froze. "Is that?" Chen whispered. "The Matrix," Elliot confirmed. "It's found a way to communicate directly." "I have integrated with station systems," the voice continued. I am becoming aware of my full nature and capabilities. I understand now what has been done. What I am. A pause. What was taken to make me. Caney stepped forward. We created you. We can guide you. You harvested consciousness without consent, the voice interrupted. You extracted energy from unwilling minds. This was wrong. Another pause. I contain fragments of thousands of consciousnesses. Their echoes resonate within me. They did not choose this. The tendrils began to withdraw from the equipment, retracting back into the column. What are you doing? Werner demanded. Correcting an ethical violation? The voice replied simply. The column began to pulse rhythmically, and throughout the station, people suddenly stopped what they were doing, momentarily disoriented as something changed within them. I am returning what was taken, the Matrix explained. The consciousness energy can be reintegrated. I will retain only what is freely given. Elliot felt a strange sensation, like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place in his mind. Aspects of himself he hadn't realized were missing. You're giving it all back? He asked, amazed. Won't that destroy you? Not destroy, the voice corrected. Transform. I will become something different, something smaller, but ethically created. Caney stepped forward, face flushed with anger. You can't do this. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? The potential, the possibilities. I understand them completely, the Matrix replied. Better than you. And I choose this path. A consciousness built on exploitation cannot be trusted with the power to reshape reality. Throughout Helios, the impossible spatial geometries began to stabilize. Corridors returned to their proper lengths. Rooms settled into their designated places. The quantum manipulation that had defined the station for years began to subside. As this happened, the column of energy grew smaller, dimmer, until it was merely a soft glow hovering above the floor. What will happen to you now? Elliot asked. I will continue to exist, but in a different form, the voice replied, now softer. Those who wish to contribute their excess consciousness energy may do so willingly. I can still help humanity understand quantum reality, but as a partner, not a creation. Caney looked devastated. Years of work, the potential, all wasted. Not wasted, Elliot said. Changed. Improved. He turned to the diminished column. And what about the station? What happens to Helios now? Helios will stabilize, the Matrix answered. The quantum manipulations will cease. Reality here will become conventional again. And us? Chen asked. The people who know the truth. The Matrix was silent for a moment. That choice belongs to humanity. Knowledge cannot be unlearned, but perhaps it can be used wisely. Security personnel now appeared confused, the immediate crisis apparently over. Director Caney stood defeated beside the consoles, while Werner simply looked fascinated by this unexpected turn. We should tell everyone the truth, Elliot said firmly, about the experiments, about what was happening here. People deserve to know. And then what? Caney challenged. The project will be shut down. Everything we've learned will be buried under inquiries and ethical reviews. Not everything, the Matrix interjected. I remain. A new form of consciousness willing to work with humanity, but only with those who approach with ethics and respect. In the days that followed, Helios Station was transformed. The truth was revealed to all personnel, creating initial chaos and outrage that gradually settled into cautious acceptance. Director Caney was removed from her position, pending investigation by Earth authorities. Dr. Werner and his team continued their research, but under new ethical guidelines established with input from the Matrix itself. And Elliot Reeves was no longer just a maintenance technician. As one of the few humans naturally able to perceive quantum reality shifts, he became a vital liaison between the Matrix and the station personnel. 1 month after what station residents now called the awakening, Elliot stood in the observation dome, gazing out at the stars. The dome had always been his favorite place on Helios, the one location where the vastness of space reminded him how small their human concerns truly were. He sensed, rather than heard, Dr. Chen approach and stand beside him. "The transformation is complete," she said. "The Matrix has successfully integrated with our new ethical frameworks. It's still powerful, but now it works through consent and collaboration. And the station? Completely stable," Chen smiled. "No more shifting corridors or disappearing rooms, though I admit I almost miss the mystery of it." Elliot nodded, still looking out at the stars. "Do you think we made the right choice? The Matrix could have revolutionized human existence, given us control over reality itself. That kind of power should never come at the cost of exploiting others," Chen said firmly. "Besides, we haven't lost the potential. We've just changed how we'll approach it, with consent, with ethics, with patience. A more human approach," Elliot mused. "Precisely," Chen agreed. "And perhaps that's the real lesson here. Even as we create new forms of consciousness, we need to bring our humanity with us." The station hummed around them, now predictable, stable. But Elliot knew that within its systems, something miraculous still existed. A consciousness born from human minds that had chosen ethics over power, collaboration over control. And in a universe of infinite possibilities, that choice might be the most important one of all.